Rowan, what's up, man?
Don't mind.
You got an invite in your LinkedIn DMs from me because you wrote something on LinkedIn. And if everyone would do me a big favor right now, and some of you in the audience have a paper under your seat, if you wouldn't mind pulling that up. And if you don't have one, just share with your neighbor. If you're just not finding one, it's because you don't have one, but you might have one, right? So you've all got a paper in front of you. We've got that paper in front of us too. It is something that Rowan will recognize from having created because he's also the father of 4chan. And he's not.
Don't put that on me.
And we'll put this on screen later, so don't worry, Jonas, if you don't find it. But it is this meme, and I wonder if you could have a look at it and explain it to the rest of us and assume that no one knows anything about what you're going to talk about.
Right. So this is a meme that I saw and that got me thinking. And it comes from this quote from Gramsci, who was a Marxist who spent a lot of time in prison and wrote a lot of really important stuff. And he wrote this line, which is often quoted: "The old world is dying and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters." And this was put out there as saying, we're kind of in that middle monster part right now, which I sort of dubbed the Gramsci Gap. And what does that mean if you work in policy communications when suddenly all the rules or the foundations of how we think the world works, suddenly all of that goes away and there's deep uncertainty? How do you communicate in that environment is a very tricky challenge. So it's something I was thinking about a lot. I don't know if I have great answers for that, but I think it is an interesting puzzle to kind of peer into, at least.
Yeah, and these monsters that you speak of, can you name one?
Unfortunately, I can name many more than one. It's sort of part of the issue there. But what we're seeing is unraveling of expectations around allies, geopolitics, trade, all these things that are kind of undercurrents that tie the world together. They've been not static, but more or less stable since the 70s and are now being thrown out the window and then, reversed and then changed back, and then it's another thing. And every day it seems like there's some new big shock happening. But below those headlines is no matter what ends up happening with the trade tariffs or what ends up happening with USAID funding or other things like that are more like could be directly impacting people's jobs. But what's happening is now we can't trust the sort of old world order, right? Because it changes every day. So that forces you to rethink some of your assumptions.
It actually, I remember when you wrote it, which is about a month ago or so now, and I was thinking, I know exactly what he's talking about, and now I know what exactly the current situation is, and that will be the situation for the rest of the year. I was like, I was thinking something similar, but what are we going to do about this situation? I don't even really like to use the words to describe it on camera because the internet is forever.
Right.
Do you feel like me that it is so hard to pin down that it's almost impossible to figure out what to do? And can you solve this problem?
Yeah, and I have one easy trick. No, I don't have any. I don't have any easy solution. I think the important thing is to accept this level of uncertainty, and you can't therefore bank on, all right, these things will remain the same, and therefore we can focus on this thing that we want to change, and that will be the variable that we're trying to impact. You can't run scientific communications or campaigns like that anymore because there is no, if there is no variable that's not moving a lot. And a lot of unexpected things happen, which ironically is when we rebranded last year, we said the future will be strange. We didn't realize it would be in 3 months. But that is our big story here. Is it's not about, it's going to be really scary or it's going to be really amazing. It's going to be unexpected. That is the actual thing that you have to internalize. And when you work from that assumption, the assumption that the unexpected will happen and that you cannot rely on steady state flows in anywhere, it changes how you approach things. I think for us, ironically, it's made us even less interested in short-term reactive work because, as you said, the internet is forever, but like policy is about every 5 minutes, you know, and it could flip-flop and allies change, and you know, I think I put it in the piece, but it was like 12 months ago, Friedrich Merz was like a pro-US debt hawk. Ursula von der Leyen was going to be focused on enforcement, you know, and Trump was distancing himself from the Project 2025, right? And all of that's flipped on its head, and the way that those things all interact also create unexpected outcomes. So you have to work from, okay, we should expect that we cannot predict what's going to happen, which means reacting in near time is kind of a sunk cost. And you just create a bunch of like stranded assets, as it were, in terms of your policy outputs or your communications outputs.
How do you make sure that the strategy then is not like just wait and see? Like how do you plan for that then?
I think you have to talk about principles and values that are key to your organization and say, these are the things that we hold to be true. And these are the stable things in this unstable environment. And that is how we are making our decisions. Rather than, I think the impulse is to go, wow, look at all this crazy stuff happening out here. In response, we have done X, Y, Z. Whereas actually, you should look inwards and say, we still believe in our mission or in our values or in our whatever it is. The core of why we exist is the thing that we are going to build this around. And whatever is happening, we don't control that. And therefore, it shouldn't matter to us.
So does that mean that you shifted from asking for specific things to just talking about high-level stuff? And is the strategy then like, we know it's crazy, but let's just kumbaya for a second on these things that we hold true, life, liberty, and the pursuit of Europeanness or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's easy to get swept up in, okay, everyone's talking about defense spending now. So how do we make our thing be about defense spending somehow so that we get the meeting or people read our report because it says defense spending on the front of it? It's kind of easy to do that, but then you just blend in, right? Because everybody is doing that. So you're not actually offering anything of value. So you have to focus on like, what is it that we can deliver that is going to be valuable to the audience? You have to be really honest about that, and then don't do it if it's not going to do value. There's just inertia in organizations to do stuff.
Yeah.
Like everybody is working on things. They want to look busy and, you know, I'm thinking about this, blah, blah, blah. But if there isn't a, you know, like an easy way to pin that back to why it is you exist and why you have employed these people and why you're raising money, whatever it is, then you don't need to do it. You don't need to add to a chaotic and unfamiliar environment. You should only do it if it's core.
So your audience is often policymakers.
Yes.
What do you do if the policymakers themselves don't know what they want and don't know what is valuable and will never admit that they actually don't know any more than you do and are dealing with the same uncertainty as you are?
Well, what an unlikely hypothetical you've put out there.
Could happen.
Yes. Yeah. Very often I will say what we hear from policymakers is, please give us something tangible.
Tell us what we should want.
Please give us something real. Do not come to us with a list of fears and complaints. We're well aware. In fact, that's what we spend all of our time thinking about and running around in circles around. Give us things that we can do that will help, right? And so there's kind of like a mix of, you have to be very idealistic, value-driven, but your outputs have to be very pragmatic, because nobody wants to hear, and this is very easy for us because we work on these emerging technologies, that it's very easy to frame them around like, oh my God, there's this risk. We didn't know about this new technology and it could be used to do X, Y, Z, you know, to end the world. This is an impulse, right, around innovation that is very easy to fall into. But all that does is just add another fear on the the big stack of fears on every commissioner's desk. It doesn't help them, right? It just adds more noise. So you have to be trying to solve problems for the people who can make decisions, right? They, as you said, they might not know what the problems are that they are trying to solve. So that makes it a little bit harder.
So they're kind of looking at you to tell them. I mean, would they kind of appreciate it if you could not only, table a solution, but also take a step back and think with them about the solution? Like, no one is unburdened by the uncertainty. Everyone's in the same boat. But I think there's still a little bit of pretending like, well, someone knows something that the other doesn't, but in fact, they just read Fox News every day like the rest of us to figure out what the story is. And you can skip a week because it basically changes every week. So they don't know what's going to happen in the next week, what the energy price is going to be, what the dollar is going to be worth, what the state of Greenland is, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think the stepping back is really helpful because the impulse in Brussels, right, is you go, okay, there are this many policy files that are active. Okay, let's link this big issue that we care about to one of these policy files and explain why it matters now to work on this thing. But that's not examining your assumptions or your first principles. That's just a framing exercise, right? So what you should be doing is saying, all right, actually, we think these policy files don't matter anymore because the world has changed in a big fundamental way. And what you should be focusing on is this other thing. Or these policy files matter, but only if they're connected to something else or whatever it is. You can't assume just normal policymaking business can adapt to whatever is going on in the world. You have to step back and say, okay, let's say we pass all of these things. Can we implement any of them? Should we be talking about institutional reform? Should we be talking about budgets? Should we be, why are we focusing on the line items in each of these policies just because they happen to be on the agenda? And that is so easy to get locked into what is on the agenda, right? You're feeding into the machine. But sometimes you can say, is this machine making anything we need?
But is it not possible? So if you look at, I'm looking at through the lens of that I think your organization would look at it, because you're big picture people.
Yeah.
You naturally think long term, or else you just wouldn't be around. If you were the short term people, there are plenty of short term people. If you look at the EU machinery now and the policy making, it's very competitiveness focused, which according to all our clients is a great thing, which we love. This is totally fine. But you might look at it like, okay, the news says this, the policy agenda is this. This policy agenda looks like it's 3 months old, which is not that old.
It's pretty good
in normal terms. But this time, it's just like that was like mid-January where that made sense. But and then a little bit more was like, okay, well then defense, and now we're like, okay, what about measles? I don't what about public health? Like there's just so much, and much has been written about the tactic coming out of one part of the world, which is do it all at once and freak them out because they won't know what hit them. I couldn't think of a more truer place for where that is the case than Brussels, because dealing with lots of things very fast is just not in the nature of the machine. It never has been. So how do we make sure that and I know you're not a policymaker, but I would vote for you. Which passport will you have will make that possible?
Irish.
No, oh, yeah, okay. So, because the accent's all wrong, and you're not welcome here.
No.
This is the right accent. How do we make sure that, it's always been a problem that policy can't keep up with reality. But you used to have a year to catch up, right? Now you have really a week. If you want to stay current, if the EU wants a shot at being in the news, then it has to actually react in that week, because the news cycle is changing so quickly and the priorities shift.
Right, and I that's a problem for the institutions to resolve, I think. For me, what we often find ourselves pushing back on is, so some news agenda will pick up momentum, and then someone will say something kind of smart about it, and then people will repeat that and over, and then it turns into this snowball thing, and now, oh yes, we have to move all this money away from energy and put it into defense because that's how you make Europe more secure. Which of course, if you step back and you go, well, wouldn't having our own energy system make us more secure? I mean, that's like, this doesn't actually make any sense. It's just like sound. It was a good soundbite that caught on. So that, I find that is a helpful thing to interject into this and say, you're maybe just following some momentum here in the attempt to keep up with the policymaking cycle. Why not make it a more holistic picture? Why try to, take millions and millions of bytes? You'd be better off reflecting, gathering things together, and making it a cohesive agenda, which is also the competitiveness pushback from the internal market is there are too many things, we don't know how to follow it. How do we implement all this stuff? It's way too complicated, right? Yeah. So that comes full circle. And you can say, well, actually, it's more strategic to not just like follow the momentum for you, and it will make it easier to implement these things, and you'll hopefully get less complaints. I mean, you're always going to get complaints because you're doing policy, right? Like that's part of the job. Sometimes the job of like a nonprofit or a think tank is to step in the way of the momentum and be like, this doesn't actually make any sense. Can we take a step back?
So just to pick up, so nonprofit, think tank, you've got one view on things, right? You're allowed to be big picture. Yeah. You're not looking at quarterly profits, and like right. You don't answer to a CEO who's looking at a publicly traded company, that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. A lot of people in Brussels are somehow connected to that. You also have done some stuff on the corporate side. Let's be honest. You used to be in an agency.
Yes.
So if you would advise someone in the private sector right now to play the same policy communications game, don't give any secrets away. He won't. He's a pro. Like if you would say, okay, I'm NGO, I'm thinking I'm doing my thing.
Yep.
I see what y'all are doing. You should do exactly the same with what you're doing, or you should do this other thing. Or in a classic European sense, this is how we should do it all together. And everything will be fine as long as we hug each other. Then we will kill all the monsters.
Yeah. There's the classic strategy consultant response here is, it depends. But it really does. I think it's a very good time right now to waste money. Like it's a very easy environment to waste money chasing the wrong thing, chasing after this, adapting, blah, 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 and trying to launch a million things. It's tempting to do that and try to cover up all that chaos and uncertainty with activity. And like, look at us, we're doing all these things, we've got a plan. And then you will look back in 2 years and be like, we could have just thought a little bit longer and put together something more cohesive and more long-term. It wouldn't have been such a waste of money. So that would be which clients always like to hear. You don't necessarily have to spend all this money right now.
And how much were you charging for an hour of your time?
So that's what I would say. It's a very easy time to waste money right now. The second would be re-examine your coalitions. You aren't necessarily going to be forming industrial blocks right now with your industry friends.
Practical tip alert.
Yeah.
Coalitions. Takeaway alert.
There's no like reason to think that your pre-existing trade association relationships or whatever are the right fit for this moment. That's the assumption to challenge, I think, from that side. Think about where you can find allies.
Are you thinking like unlikely allies?
For sure. There's a lot of movement.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
And I think there are a lot of people worried about the same things. Mm-hmm. And it's actually, that's the sort of, it's uniting to have a common foe, right? And that creates a lot of unlikely areas of cooperation that wouldn't have been imaginable or wouldn't have been seen as practical a year ago. It makes for a very different environment now.
So we started down the practical tips route, which I was going to segue to anyway, because we have an audience of policy communicators. Some are in the room. And if I walk in the street and people did not see practical tips on the last episode of Policy Communications is a Thing, then they literally slap me in the face and say, it was great, but where were the practical tips, Brett? And which you just love to hear. Tom Moylan knows. What are the practical tips? And we'll just do this as just the cut out of the whole thing, just to placate this one group. It's a very fair ask. It's just sometimes, it's like we don't know what the answers either. Nobody knows the answers. We're making up the whole thing. So if you did have to, like, say that you were in front of the new class of policy communicators, it's like it's the police academy, but for Brussels policy communicators. And they're all about to graduate, and you're about to send them on their way to like tackle this weird, wild, uncertain VUCA environment, which is like literally actually VUCA now. Used to just pretend like it was. Every year we had the same thing.
the
times of uncertainty.
Yeah.
The next consultancy event was like, what do we do in times of uncertainty? And that was 2020, 2019, 2023. We always have the same events, but people keep coming, keep paying us lots of money in the big consultancy game, which we don't do. But anyway, back to the practical tips. Like teach us the class for what you should do right now, like if you're really confused and you need an actual thing.
Yeah. So I would scrub your editorial calendar, redo your stakeholder
But
mapping.
it's International Day of
Scrub it, doesn't
Yellow
matter.
Sweaters, right?
There's too many things to react to. Scrub that, and then think about what are the most strategic pieces that you have in your pipeline and move them up. And those will probably be the more big picture type pieces that you have, coming along. Try to avoid the nitty gritty. I think for now, it's too much uncertainty, too much going on. I would also say take a day and do a new stakeholder mapping workshop internally and figure out, I like to do them on an axis. It's like, all right, there's these people, they hate us, they love us, agree, disagree. Are they active? Are they inactive? Yeah. There is going to be movement from whenever you last did that.
Who's in the middle? What do we call those people? The movable middle. That's another consultancy term. Do you all not know that yet? Because if you're not using that, then you're missing out on a pay rise, because everybody loves that when they see it in the policy meeting and you're like, yeah, these are the ones who hate us. These are the ones who love us. But this is the movable middle. And you're like, behold, we can get this one to come over here. And they're like, wow, that was literal magic.
Genius.
Here's the pay rise. You're now the policy communications director.
Now everybody is movable. So I think that's the thing that's exciting at the moment, is actually people are moving all over the place. And so I would do that. And then the next thing I would do is identify maybe some of those unlikely people that you could win over and organize a behind closed doors roundtable with them and see what the level of interest is. Do it Chatham House so that everybody feels safe to actually have opinions. And then you can come up with a plan from there. But basically reassess who your friends are, reassess what on like an issues point of view is winnable in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term. Do it again from scratch, because it is not the world that you planned for.
Okay, so I'm just thinking, I hear what you're saying. I think for a senior person like yourself who can just say that at the management meeting because you're management, that's going to fly. For others who are kind of still clawing their way into the room, it sounds like if it wasn't delivered as perfectly as you did, because you nailed it, then it might come over as do things that feel like meetings and talking, right? I don't think that you didn't say that. I do think that you said do meetings and talking, do talking.
And thinking.
And thinking. Some doing, but the doing is mostly the talking in the meeting. But I think to give it like the headlines, like the headers, the policy communications headers, there are tactics in there. One is third-party coalition building, right?
Yeah.
You thought you knew who your friends and your foes were, not necessarily. So you're like seeking out people who are also trying to seek out other people. Like everybody's kind of dating professionally to see. So what are you doing about this? Like, are we going to ride it out? You want to ride it out with me?
Right.
It's like when you, if you weren't in a couple at COVID, then you formed a couple because you needed one. Was it like COVID cuffing season? I don't know. I don't know anything about that. Missed all that. I'm sorry, fully married. But it's kind of like, if you all agree that you're not going to react really quickly to something, because how could you? Like whatever you say on Monday is not valid on Friday.
Right.
So all you can do is actually convene groups of like-minded people and actually lead in those communities of like-minded people. So you should basically be founding the new coalition that will be ready when you're ready to use it.
Right.
But so it really, like, is the headline, can this episode be about coalition building and redefining
I would
that,
say,
or what?
and to be able to do that, you have to stop reacting.
Okay.
The impulse is to react.
Okay.
But then all that really does is, and I shared it recently, it was a good piece of media analysis from a guy who covers like Danish media, but he was looking at look at all the headlines this year in like the Danish media. It was 37% of them were about one man, right, who is not Danish. And he's like, that's just objectively insane for these media outlets. Like that makes absolutely no sense. But I think if other people were doing reviews of their outputs this year, you would find a similar trend. A lot of it is extremely reactive to, very powerful people that we are scared of, right? But like, who is that servicing actually to give that more time and energy and more oxygen and space? Like, are you in a position to actually affect any of the stuff that they're talking about? Maybe, probably not a lot of the time. You have to stop reacting first before you can actually start building for the next thing, which there is now fertile opportunity for thinking about that next thing.
Cool. Let's McKinsey this. Step 1, don't react.
Step 1, stop reacting. Yeah.
Stop reacting.
You're doing it right now.
Step 2, reassess, right? Step 3, have meetings and talk.
Build,
sorry. Build coalitions.
Come on, it has to sit on a slide, 7 words or less.
And at what point can you make a prediction when we get to step 4, when we're actually, at a certain point we have to say something or no?
Yeah?
At some point. Do you know when the monsters will have been slain and we can talk again about doing things? Do you have a...
Definitely not, but I know it's when the commission stops reacting.
Step 4.
Because that's
follow the commission's lead.
That's taking up a lot of
and it will be
space
fine.
As well, right?
Okay.
Like, unless you need to get something in one of these omnibuses, there's going to be a bunch of those in a row. Unless you really need to be in those,
right?
That's going to eat up all the time and energy of all the people that you want. Right.
So do you feel that omnibus is like going to be the subject of all of the Danish media articles that were previously inhabit, like that, the new thing that everyone's talking about? Because what the EU is doing is totally reacting and getting it, just nailing it.
And
the world is talking about it.
No, it's still...
The monsters came.
It's still all going to be about Elon Musk.
And we threw the omnibuses at them.
But yeah, I think my prediction would be this year, it's going to be a lot of omnibuses. So unless something that you own or it's very core to your work is being eaten up by one of those omnibuses, it's going to be very hard to get other things done whilst the commission is scrambling to put those things through, right?
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for joining this final episode of Policy Communications. Is a thing which will be renamed for the next time as Omnibus. Thanks, Ron. That was the show.